Age of Men is over. The time of the Orc has come.
Alright, hello YouTube, welcome back to the Goblin King YouTube channel. Today's video we're going to be concluding our series as I've gone through the first two books for the Lord of the Rings series. This will be the final book review. We'll be doing Return of the King in today's video. And I wanted to just say, before I get into the actual analysis of the book, things I liked, I can't think of anything I actually disliked in this book, so this is going to be a book that I really do praise quite a lot. I want to give a lot of credit to Tolkien on this series. It's by far, in my opinion, the greatest fantasy series of all time. I don't think it'll ever be passed unless maybe George R. R. Martin finishes A Song of Ice and Fire. This trilogy is, in its entirety, complete. All of the themes wrap up really well. This is a series that's very close to my heart. It is my first real introduction into any type of fantasy, whether that be because of the movies, the books. I have a very strong emotional tie to this series. So again, I just wanted to say, a massive shout out to Tolkien and the legacy that he has left and the people's lives that he has impacted with this series. And that is including me as well, as this is kind of like my comfort food. When a lot of people are going through hardships, they go to things that are familiar to them, things that are comforting to them. And this is one of those things. I mean, if I look at any point of my life, some of the worst moments, whether it's, losing family members or just low points in my life, this has always been where I've gone to, The Lord of the Rings. And we're going to try to do it justice and give it a final send-off for the series and giving a conclusion and my review of The Return of the King. But before we get into the video, if you guys like to like, subscribe, and comment, please do. It helps the channel grow, reach our appeal out, might like this content as well. So let's get into Return of the King. So Return of the King picks up directly after the end of Two Towers, the ending with Pippin and Gandalf. That's about the midpoint of that book. And again, this book kind of has the same similar format of the Two Towers, where we kind of have the Aragorn plot and all of the rest of our fellowship. And then the second half of the book is really all about our Sam and Frodo plot. And whereas in Two Towers, I said that one of my minor complaints was the way that that was actually paced, it's not the same for this book, because inherently the stakes are much different, and it makes a lot of sense to have Frodo and Sam's adventure be after everything that happens at Minas Tirith and the march to the Black Gate and kind of the beginning of that. That all makes a lot of sense. Whereas in the Two Towers, I kind of felt like you kind of had some pacing issues because it was the middle part of Frodo and Sam's journey. There's a lot of kind of wandering around. And again, it's all fantastic, but inherently it's a slower pace than the first half of the story. And this story, The Return of the King, why it's my second favorite of the three. Again, I still think Fellowship is my favorite. I really just love the opening story. But Return of the King does a great job of understanding what is the priority. Where, yes, it's great if our forces of good win this battle at the Pelennor Fields and Minas Tirith, but it doesn't matter, because if Frodo can't destroy the ring, this was all for nothing. Sauron can recoup and attack again. And that's made very apparent, right? When we look at the tone of this book, the tone of this book is actually fairly dark, right? When we see this battle, this great looming threat, and this is something that I actually think the books did much better than the movies did. I think the movie Return of the King did really well as building the threat of Sauron and the looming force coming from Minas Tirith at Osgiliath and things like that. And it's something that I think is very interesting because in the Two Towers, I talked about how in the book, the Two Towers, getting to Helm's Deep is not like the main focus of the book. It's something that happens naturally, but there's not as much like build up to it, right? We don't have all of these scenes showing maybe the instability of Rohan or showing our characters fearing that they could lose this battle. There was kind of like a natural progression of we didn't really have time to even think about those things when going into the Battle of Helm's Deep. And inherently the Battle of Helm's Deep wasn't even really as long as it was in the film, where the film really propped up that part of it as being the main thing we're building up to in the middle movie, whereas that really wasn't the focus in the book. And in, again, the Return of the King movie, we really didn't get a lot of the build-up of the Battle of Pelennor Fields. We don't really get a lot of Pippin interacting with the people of Gondor. There's a lot of characters that get cut from the Pelennor Fields battle, especially on the Gondor side. There's not really a lot of figureheads outside of just Faramir. So I think that's something I really liked with the book, is that the book takes us on this journey where we understand who the people of Gondor are. We get to see more of the culture from which Boromir is from, and why Boromir kind of is the one that gets tempted to try to take the ring from Frodo, because it really feels like Minas Tirith is this great, once, beautiful city that's kind of fallen. Minas Tirith has homes that seem deserted. There's not many children around. It's not very, there's not flowers everywhere. It's kind of gives you, again, that feeling of a city that is in decline. And it really fits really well with the idea that, again, there haven't been any kings in Gondor for a long time. And the idea of someone even coming back and being this fabled king is very foreign to these people. They've become so used to having a steward. And that to me is something that I think is really good, because it really builds upon characters like Denethor, a character like Aragorn when he does come. It even builds upon Boromir, even 2 books later, on why he was the person that he was, who he was influenced. And Denethor is another character that I think is much more compelling in the book than he is in the movie, where Denethor is this character that, he does have his issues. He's not a perfect guy. He does, again, because of desperation, grief, all these things build to him where, he does become this character that is, I wouldn't say crazy. Like the idea I feel like in the movie is that Denethor is just kind of crazy. In the book, it's much more complicated. Denethor is someone that has seen his impending doom for years. He is someone that, again, has been looking through the Seeing Stone. He is seeing what is going on. He's probably been influenced and corrupted by Sauron. There's a lot going on there, but he's also a very wise character as well. He is someone that, again, can see all of these things. He is someone that, again, inherently is not dumb. And you can see that the death of Boromir has very much affected him. And Boromir's death, I think, for me, with Denethor, is kind of the final nail in the coffin that Gondor is doomed. Because, again, Boromir was the person that it seemed like was keeping Mordor at bay. And when he fell, things kind of started to not go so well. But we even see how, I think, Denethor overlooks Faramir, because Faramir, I think, is a very compelling character. He's someone that I really enjoy. He's one of my favorite characters. He's definitely a highlight for me. I talked about in, my Two Towers review. Faramir is one of my favorite parts of that book. It's definitely my favorite part of Sam and Frodo's plotline in book 2. So it's a really great dynamic that we see in Gondor. And there's really this feeling of dread, as Gondor isn't going to be able to stop Mordor. Yes, we can hold out, but if we don't get a lot of help, if there are things that, don't happen, even as we're seeing, some of the soldiers coming up from the southern parts of Gondor, and we're seeing all of these groups of people, it doesn't seem like it's enough, right? We're kind of noting that this is less than what we'd hoped for. There's this, scene that we see in the movie where it's basically Theoden saying, and Aragorn saying, this isn't enough. We'd expected more. That's kind of the feeling of Gondor right now, where it's like, yes, all of these great captains are coming back to Gondor for the defense of Minas Tirith, but it isn't enough. And Rohan is still too far away, it seems like. They're not going to be able to get there in time. And you have the Corsairs of Umbar coming up from the south, which is, again, another reason why a lot of these southern Gondorian kingdoms can't get men to Minas Tirith, because they're tied up in other fights. And it, again, really dives into the idea of what was Sauron doing during this time. He was really distracting the free peoples. He was throwing things that he didn't really want to win. It was to distract all of these main forces so they couldn't combine together like how we saw with the last time Sauron rose up. So again, I really like the way this is all laid out within the first third of the book. And then we kind of, again, we get Osgiliath falling, and we get, again, it just feels like the noose is just tightening on Gondor. And we just see the Pelennor Fields, which is a battle that it's hard to describe. It's a culmination of these 3 books of Aragorn going on his journey, becoming, again, the man he's meant to be. And again, this doesn't really hit as hard. This is one thing that is a minor gripe to me, is that I do like narratively the way Aragorn is in the movies compared to the book, because in the book it's not really like Aragorn has been fighting his destiny. Like, he doesn't want to be this person because he's afraid of him being, close to Sildor, being tempted by the ring, not being basically good enough and taking that kingship role. In the book, Aragorn is very much that character where he knows he's going back to Gondor. He is going to help fix everything and then, become the king. That's not really ever a question with Aragorn's character. It's about really just getting there, going through it, and being a person that the people of Gondor can respect, love, and willingly make them his king. That's the key point of Aragorn's story, is that how does Aragorn go through this book without forcing himself onto the people of Gondor? How does he do that? He does that by healing. He does that by bringing aid, freeing up the southern kingdoms of Gondor to come help at the Battle of Pelennor Field. So being a hero in that point of it, but also being someone that is healing our main characters like Faramir, like Eowyn, like Merry. He's a character then that takes this mighty journey that says, I'm still not going to enter Minas Tirith as the king. And he goes to the Black Gate, because the war is not over. And that's something that I really like about this book, is that, yes, this battle may be over. Our forces of good win the Battle of Pelennor Fields, and the way it's described is fantastic. Again, it's a highlight of this book. And overcoming all of the odds, our forces of good win. But it's a very hollow victory. And Tolkien really makes us understand that. This is not a victory that's winning us the battle. There's a reason there's still another half of this book. Because we didn't win really anything. We delayed the inevitable. Just like when Boromir and our forces of Gondor fight off, again, Mordor, and they break the bridges. They're delaying the inevitable. That eventually Mordor will attack again and we won't be able to defend them. So it's a really dark theme. And I think it fits really well into this book, where you have a lot of uplifting themes by the end. This is one of those dark themes where we really get the idea here that Frodo destroying the ring and our forces beating Sauron should be near impossible. And that prompts our forces to understand that there's really only two options that we have. One option is that we take this victory and we wait. Because again, Sauron will attack again. We bide our time. We take the safe option of we get to live on for, maybe a few more weeks, few days, months, maybe years, until Sauron is ready again to attack. Or do we try to win the war now? Do we try to go to the Black Gate, force all of Sauron's attention on them, bring out and empty all of Mordor onto them? It's a suicide mission. No force is going to be able to take on all of Mordor. But it's the choice that makes the most sense on how to defeat Sauron. And that's kind of where we leave off with this storyline for now. But again, it's very compelling. It's very dark. It really is amazing. Another point I want to talk about with this storyline, and one of my favorite parts of this, is Eowyn. And I want to specifically look at Eowyn as this character that is a female protagonist that is done correctly. We see in Hollywood all of the time. We've kind of seen this shift of having a lot of female lead stars, which is great, as long as you build their characters correctly. So I want to look at, for instance, Rings of Power, the way they did Galadriel compared to Eowyn. This is a kind of a video I want to do all on its own, but Eowyn is this character that's very flawed. She has her flaws. She is someone that has a really amazing character arc and what she wants to accomplish. She is a character that you can really sympathize with, not wanting to kind of sit on the sidelines while everybody else does stuff, right? Where you're just having to sit here and wait, where, again, you're basically waiting for death to come. You're not actively trying to help the forces of good. You're being told to sit on the sidelines. It's a really compelling arc for Eowyn, and her arc, especially with how it kind of concludes with Faramir, it's fantastic. And I just really want to take a look at that in a video by itself. So if you guys are interested in me doing an Eowyn video, because again, she is one of my favorite characters in this book series, right there alongside of Faramir. I think the two are just two of the best and most complex characters within the story. So I want to take a look at her, but again, so her journey kind of takes her with Merry, and what I think is really interesting is that, again, Tolkien is asking you to, again, to pay attention, because unlike in the movie, where the movie, it's like you can't really have Eowyn's identity be kind of hidden. It's really impossible to do. So in the book, in the movies, they don't really do that. They just have Eowyn kind of being hidden from like Theoden and Aemir, not from Merry. In the book, it's much different, where you're given all of the signs to understand that this probably is Eowyn, but you have Merry who doesn't know that, right? Eowyn just thinks this is another man. And when you kind of get to, the battle, Pelennor Fields happens, and the Witch King comes. Again, the Witch King, for a lot of you guys that don't know, is actually like one of my favorite villains in any type of media. I really love him. I'm going to be dressing up as him for Halloween. I don't know how I'm going to do it because getting his actual like Return of the King mask is super expensive, so I might just have like a little crown or something. But he is a character that's very interesting because he's this arrogant character who doesn't believe he can be killed. And it goes all the way back to this, again, this prophecy that's laid down by Glorfindel back when the Witch King was that kind of rising in his own power, and when he has to flee Angmar, however you say it. I really think it's interesting the way Eowyn kind of overcomes this, and she's quite literally going against death. I think it's a very strong character arc for her. And we also have another tie-in to kind of the Barrow Downs blades with Merry stabbing the Witch King as well to help. It's a really compelling arc for the two characters, and I really love the way they did it. We see a really heroic death by Theoden as well, and Aemir is someone that really steps up into that role of being the captain of Rohan, or the king of Rohan. Again, there's a lot of arcs that really just conclude perfectly in this book. And I really do love the way Tolkien deals with this side of it. So that kind of leads us to the second half of this book. So the second half of the book, we see... Now, Frodo and Sam kind of picks up at a really pivotal part of the story. So Frodo has been taken. He's in Cirith Ungol. He's been taken again. He had just been stung by Shelob at the end of the last book. And Sam has to go find him. And this is some of the best writing for Sam's character. He's this guy that... We're really seeing him come into his own. He has to be the greatest friend of all time. He basically gets into this fortress or outpost. It's more like an outpost is really what I would call it. And he's someone that overcomes his fear. He's someone that, again, doesn't give in to the temptation of the ring, which is something that shows the Hobbit's strength. And I really, don't really need, in my opinion, to talk about the specifics of Frodo and Sam's storyline, because it's more of a theme, like how impossible it really is that they complete this journey. Frodo and Sam are two characters that I think we as people can feel for their journey, right? It's hard. It is a dark reading their chapters. It feels like as we continue, the weight of what's going to happen to these two characters is this task seems impossible. We see that, again, they're going hungry. They don't really have anything to drink. Frodo can barely even walk anymore. It's just this whole completion of how we've seen the ring slowly gain more power over Frodo. And, as we continue on this journey trying to get to Mount Doom, it really shows, one, Sauron has this arrogance, which I think, again, he's gotten some criticism from, I think, the fan base, but to me, Sauron is kind of okay. I'm okay with him being very arrogant because, again, like we see at the end of this book, Frodo is not even able to destroy the ring. It takes Gollum to actually, again, destroy the ring. And when you look at the way Frodo and Sam are able to make it, even to Mount Doom in general, let's not even talk about them actually getting to the point where they could destroy it. They were seen by an orc party. They get very lucky that they get away from that. They are multiple times Nazgul fly over them. They are not seen. Again, it's supposed to, again, put on this idea of the impossibility of even traversing this land because this land inherently seems poisonous. The whole land seems unlivable in. And I think when we, again, keep progressing through this story, you feel that with your characters. Something I talk about with all of these books is that the atmosphere, the environment, you feel like you're there with the characters. And when we finally get to the climax of this, story with Frodo and Sam, and we have the ring is finally destroyed. It feels like a weight has just been taken off of the audience, and our characters. That it's a hard feeling to believe because it feels like such a long journey. It feels like we've been going through these 3 books for this single moment, and for it finally to be relieved when this didn't seem possible. I mean, again, I did a video all about Gandalf talking about his reaction to Frodo and Sam taking the path of Cirith Ungol and through Shelob's lair, and how Gandalf's kind of horrified by that, because there really was no good way, safe way to get into Mordor in a short amount of time. Because Frodo and Sam destroy the ring at probably the best time they could, right? If this had taken, let's say Frodo and Sam are delayed, they take an extra rest of a day, Aragorn and the entire party of our fellowship and the people that were there at the Black Gate would have died. And that's another point when you go back to Eowyn's arc and how it's finally concluded, where we see Eowyn again has this kind of a thirst for fighting or violence. And it's because she doesn't, again, want to sit in the background and watch, as the fate of the world is put into others' hands. She wants to be a part of that. And again, she's, is someone that, again, killing the Witch King hurt her, a lot, right? There's some side effects that come with that. Aragorn, does heal her and such. But it's this idea that she and Faramir are perfect for each other. And Faramir tries to basically, get around to her, that there's nothing they can do, right? Outside of, trying to do better for the world, for the people that are here. I really like the way that's tied into the arc with our characters that are at the Black Gate, and our characters that are in Mordor at this moment. And we see that the ring is destroyed. And this is not the end of the story, right? There's still a lengthy part of the story after this moment. And right, it does feel like this grand, happy ending to this fantasy story. We see Aragorn finally become king, and it's a really happy moment. We see kind of the world go back to its normal state. Theoden, his body, and the rest of Rohan, they go back. We see Aragorn and a lot of the party travel with the hobbits as they go back to their home, which they haven't been for a long time. And we get an interesting encounter. They encounter Saruman, who has basically been broken at this point. He's kind of just, when you put together Gandalf's appearance and Saruman's by the end of Return of the King, it's just night and day. And again, the entire time, really, we've been getting, again, alluded to, this has been foreshadowed through the previous books, that the Shire is not doing good. And it's really heavily foreshadowed towards the end of Return of the King. But I love the theme that is here, is that this wasn't just a war that was on other people's front door. This war hit everywhere. And there's so many themes you can think about when it comes to war, and the idea of, where Tolkien was coming from with, either that being the World Wars or any other time period in history, is that war is inherently bad. It affects innocent people. It affects everyone. These hobbits who have kept to themselves, are naturally very peaceful people, are enslaved, basically. They're basically being put on a curfew. They are having their food taken from them. They are living in absolute hell. And when you go back to the first book, or even The Hobbit, and you read, some of the petty problems that the Shire has, and how, they have all of these different meals, and they live very comfortably, right? And when you get to the end of the book, and you see what the Shire has become, naturally, its beauty has faded. It just is not the same place anymore. Industry has completely destroyed the Shire. It's very heartbreaking, as a reader, because, you're expecting our characters who have gone through hell. They've been through battles. They've gone through Mordor. They've dealt with the ring, to come home, and this isn't a happy ending. It's not over yet. And we see our characters basically have to take back their home. It's a really interesting way to end this story, because in a lot of ways, You could have just ended this in a nice, happy ending. And that's not what Tolkien does. Even after this point, it's not a happy ending for a lot of our characters. It's a very bittersweet moment for a lot of our characters. And even when you look at the way the scouring of the Shire is handled, Frodo is a wise and changed person. You know, Frodo has always been this wise character since he left the Shire. He comes back with, again, I think more. And I think all of our characters have learned so much with, being around some of these noble and great people and the experiences they've gone through. Is that Frodo, even though he's seen his home be, destroyed, he doesn't want these people, these ruffians or Sauron and specifically, be killed. He wants them to just leave. Again, the idea that blood for blood is not the answer to a lot of the problems here. We need diplomacy, we need to work things out, and it doesn't go completely to plan, naturally, because some things happen, but it's a really great shift in the way we see a character like Frodo, how he's kind of grown up even more since the beginning of the story. It's a fantastic way to conclude the story. And again, we talk about this where, you could just have a happy ending here. Tolkien doesn't do that. Tolkien shows us that Frodo is damaged. He is someone that every year he can feel the dagger that he was attacked with. The Morgul blade that he was attacked with on Weathertop comes up, every one so often, every year on that anniversary of Weathertop. And we see that the ring still has kind of affected Frodo, just like how it has with Bilbo. And so Frodo as a whole is someone that is not complete anymore. He's not a complete person. He can't really go back to this life of normalcy. And it's something that Frodo tries to hide from people, but it's just that idea that Frodo, again, war has scarred him. Again, it's a really great theme for war as a whole, because when people come back, they're not the same, whether they have PTSD, whether, you lose limbs, you lose something. Either whether that's brothers or family members or friends, this is what war does. And it is a fantastic way to kind of complete Frodo's arc, where he can't stay here anymore. And he has to go to the Undying Lands to live out the rest of his life. It's a really amazing way, because when you get to the end of the story and you see Frodo leave with Gandalf and Bilbo and Elrond and Galadriel, it's a real tearjerker. I mean, watching Frodo have to leave his friends and knowing that this is the end, that Frodo couldn't even find peace in the Shire after these adventures. Very compelling story. And in my opinion, this is the perfect way to finish this arc. I know why the movies didn't do the Scouring of the Shire kind of plot line, because the movie was so long already. But I do think, it is a missed opportunity. There's a lot of great themes that come with we have the themes and ideas of kind of the idea of PTSD, or a lot of our veterans that come back from war. And it really resonates with the character of Frodo. And the idea that war has completely shifted the way our characters are now able to live their lives. They can't go back to the normal way, because for them, the Shire isn't the same. The world is not the same. For, all these other people that live in the Shire, the life goes on. They didn't really experience what was really going on in the wide world. If you want to compare this to, I guess, current to our own, history, if you look at, say, like World War II, I reference that a lot in videos. The idea that all of these soldiers come back from war, and it kind of feels like nothing has changed for the average person. The average person didn't see the atrocities going on in Europe, or any of that stuff. And it really feels like that's written into Lord of the Rings, and it makes a ton of sense. Tolkien had deep ties with issues like that, and it's, to me, the perfect ending. And so we get this ending where Frodo goes away to the Undying Lands, where he will eventually die, because it's not really how that works for mortals. But he's able to find peace and rest without all of the injuries he has sustained, whether that be with Shelob or some of the other ones I had mentioned earlier. And so all of this culminates in, yes, a happy ending for certain characters, and for the world of Middle-earth, fairly happy ending, but for a lot of our characters, it's a very bittersweet ending. Yes, Sam goes on to have a family and continue on his life and his garden, but he loses his best friend, someone that was very close to him, and so again, it just shows this constant idea of happy ending, but a little flawed and a more realistic happy ending. So again, I wanted to say thank you guys for everyone that's come on this journey as I've reviewed the main 3 books. I know it was kind of quite a gap between book 2 and book 3's review. I've just been really busy. And again, I wanted to say a massive shout out to this book series. Again, this media is, very influential in my younger life, and even now, again, I'm making a YouTube video about it, so it's still very important. I quite literally have a replica of the One Ring that I wear occasionally. So again, I really love this series, and it's helped me get through a lot of dark times in my life. So I wanted to say a massive, again, thank you to Tolkien for the world that he built, the way that's influenced fantasy and other franchises that I've loved, notably A Song of Ice and Fires, and George R. R. Martin was heavily inspired by Tolkien. So yeah, we've kind of come to the end of this journey of reviewing the books. I may do a review on The Hobbit, as I have read The Hobbit, within the last year, so I could probably do a review on that. But yeah, I don't know where we're gonna go with Lord of the Rings from now on. I don't know if I'm gonna do like little maybe mini lore videos or not on it. Um, I've thought about reviewing the Hobbit movies because I know they get a lot of hate, and I understand why they do, but I'm someone that, I do think there are good things sprinkled within them, and I don't inherently think they are awful movies. But let me know if you guys want me to do that, and I will see you guys all in the next video, and hopefully I'm a little bit more consistent on this channel. I just have not had time with physical therapy for my back. I've been sick the last week, so it's just been a struggle with uploading. But yeah, I hope you guys all enjoy, and I'll see you guys all in the next video. Bye, guys.